welcome to the 99. My name is Brianna Gray. I'm the National Press Secretary for the Bernie Sanders campaign, and I am joined today by two very special guests, two of my faves, Belen, Latino Press Secretary, and very, very special guest and surrogate, Philip Agnew, he's co-founder of the Dream Defenders. I know you know about them. Really huge and active in the Trayvon Martin protests down in Florida. Also felon enfranchisement protests down in Florida. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that today more. But generally speaking, this is an episode where we want to talk about the path from activism to political advocacy. And it's very fitting that I have these two with me here today because they both have exemplified that in their lives, and I want to learn a little bit more about their personal stories. First up, though, I want to remind everyone to please engage with us in the comment section. We get this every time, but yes, this is live. We will respond to you, and we want to know what you think and what's on your mind. So, Phil, since it's such a treat to have you today, I want to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you got started in activism, what your background is like?
Yeah, so I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I pour on the south side of Chicago, and what I always say is I was radicalized by how I grew up. I was politicized in college, but I grew up, my father would drive us around the nicer parts of Chicago. He would tell us, he was a storyteller, he would tell us about Chicago. And I always just wondered why the world seemed unfair. That's what I thought it was just unfair. I grew up in the church, so my dad and my mom were very religious. So they prayed hard. They gave 10% every week. They worshiped and they sang hard. They worked very hard. My mother is the hardest working person I knew. My dad is the smartest person I knew. He was on Jeopardy when I was in 3rd grade.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he was a genius.
How far did he get?
He bet it all on a daily double.
What was it?
He got it wrong, but I don't remember what the question was.
You gotta remember the question.
He got it wrong. No, it's purged from our minds. It's like we don't even talk about it. But they did everything that they told us to do, and they were doing it really well, but we were poor. And so I grew up real angry about not being able to have, and then I wound up going to magnet school. And at the magnet school I went to, it was people with Lex trucks, you know what I'm saying, and Benzes.
Sorry,
and
I'm
right.
Sorry, I'm not rich enough apparently.
No. And this is what they got, and so I grew up that way. But to really answer your question directly, I went to Florida A&M University. And that's when I first started to get into organizing and activism. There was a young man who was murdered in 2005 in a boot camp named Martin Lee Anderson. And the guards killed him. And they were going to cover it up, and we found out about it. And that was my first, I was able to see, thousands of people come together and say, we're not going to leave this office until the governor does something about it. I was able to see something done, not enough. And so I was just... From that point on, I think I found my purpose. And, one of my favorite quotes, the universe will conspire for your success, right? When you walk in your purpose. So what I like to say is when you do not walk in your purpose, what does the universe do to you? You know what I'm saying?
That's bleak.
I came back to organizing later. And so it's really about my family, the way I grew up, and the fact that I always felt that things were wrong. I didn't know why, and when I found out why and that we could do something about it, I couldn't go back.
So that's really interesting to me because I think a lot of people, you'll watch the news, you see things going on that strike you as unjust, but the overwhelming majority of people never take the leap, and I would include myself among that until working on this campaign and maybe starting to work as a journalist.
Yeah, don't be hard. Yeah,
I mean, but not until becoming a journalist do I think I ever really thought to personally inject myself into things that were going on outside of my life, and to make the particularly large leap to kind of put your life and body on the line. And I want to turn to you, Belen, because that's something that you've done in particular at great potential risk to yourself, doing activism for undocumented people. Can you tell people a little bit about your story?
Well, I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I was brought to the United States when I was 6, and my family always lived in Arizona, which is very ironic because it's known as one of the most anti-immigrant states in the country, that I would have ended up there. And so when we talk about like the universe, right? I kind of feel like maybe if I wouldn't have grown up there, maybe I wouldn't be, you know, where I am now. Maybe I wouldn't have seen the things that I saw. But for me, it was always very personal. It was, you know, being there, seeing families in pain because, you know, their mom was being taken away from their house. It was seeing friends and people very close to me that, you know, are just like me. They're people being put in these dire situations where they, you know, didn't have anywhere to go and they're so dehumanized that, you know, you feel like no one cares. But for me, it was because I saw other young people doing it first, right? So I wasn't the first one that decided to get arrested.
You didn't invent activism. We'll let you off the hook for that.
I wasn't the first one who put everything on the line there, you know, for decades to the civil rights movement, which has been a huge inspiration to the undocumented community of people who stood up and fought for their rights as humans, right? As people.
Yeah, I want to throw up this picture if we could, Mia. Can you tell us what's going on here?
I was getting arrested.
When was this?
It was November 2017. It had been right after the Trump administration took the DACA program away after Jeff Sessions had announced it. This was actually at the Senate Hurt Building here in D.C. And we, you know, took out these huge banners and we said, you know, you're gonna listen to us. We need a DREAM Act. Like, time is running out. There are people who are counting the days until, or not even counting the days, they're at zero. Where they could just be detained for the smallest thing, like even just, you know, having a taillight out, which is not a crime. And, you know, just because they're here, undocumented doesn't mean that they deserve to be detained for years and years and then eventually sent back to a place they don't know anything about. So I felt like this was the moment. I think you feel it, right? And I'm sure you probably know, you feel it where it's just like, this is the moment. Like, I have to do it. I can't sit here. And so I did it twice. 1 month apart. You know, I was like, you know what? I don't have anything else to lose. And if it takes me having to sacrifice something for millions of other people to be able to be safe, then that's what I'll do.
So I had a conversation, and those of you who listen to the podcast Through the Burn will have heard this and heard Belen on that episode as well. But I've had a conversation with a young woman, DACA recipient, who was part of a film called Infiltrators, where she and some of her colleagues got themselves intentionally detained in order to help people who are already detained communicate with folks on the outside. And what she said was that the fact that she was a DACA recipient made her feel like she had just the veneer, a little bit of protection that those that she was advocating for didn't have. And that is why she felt compelled to kind of put herself in the line of fire. Because ultimately she could like wave the DACA flag and be like, okay, for now I have this level of protection that everyone else doesn't have. Is that what was, did you feel the same way?
A little bit, but I think that things change when you have different leaders, right? And I think that's why like this election is so important too, because, you know, things were very different getting arrested under President Obama than it was getting arrested under the Trump administration, where the program was trying to be wiped out just altogether, where we didn't really know if we were going to be protected by DACA anymore. It was kind of like up in the air. And that's why the longer we spent in detention, the more likely it was that ICE would come to the jail because they collaborate together and come pick us up. So that was the point we were trying to make, right? We spent 6 days and we were like, we're not going to leave until you pass a DREAM Act. And the longer we stay, like, our deportation's on you because you decided not to do anything. And that was, you know, the goal. That was what we were trying to do. And unfortunately, we don't have a DREAM Act still. But, you know, these fights don't go unnoticed. It doesn't mean that other people don't see, you know, what's being done and don't feel inspired.
Yeah, well, I'm with you, you know, I'm over ICE.
Fresh.
So I want to ask both of you then, with these kind of really kind of like grassroots, activist-oriented backgrounds, why have you chosen to get involved with national electoral politics now with the Bernie Sanders campaign? And what do you hope to accomplish? Why Bernie, Phil?
Well, genuinely for me, I feel like we created this, for better or for worse, no matter who you support. I think the movement created this field of Democratic candidates. So for the last 10 years, really, you know, you talked about the civil rights movement. We can go back to labor, right? We can go back to women's suffrage. We can absolutely go back to the fight of slaves against slavery. There's been a consistent history of movement, right? And every time this country moves forward, it has been because of the movement of people who have been determined that this country needs to live up to the promises that it inked 400 years ago. And so for me, I think it would be a wasted opportunity to have worked for over 10 years now in movement and created an entire democratic field of candidates, including the policies, whether watered down or otherwise, that they are putting forward, and to have a candidate who has accelerated a conversation around the central issues of this country and what is the solutions to our issues, to not really get into this opportunity, this fight, and I really call it an opportunity, right? Seems like a waste, right? I'm not a person who singularly is for protest or singularly is for electoral politics or voting or singularly about any specific tactic. I think we've got to use everything at our disposal at a time when it is very real, life and death for millions of people. And I felt like, and I know, and I've always known, that Bernie, his policies, his politics, his principles, his platform, right? His personality, right, is one that is fitting for this moment. If you're not animated, if you're not angry, if you don't wake up in the morning with your arms flailing about what's going on in the world, then you're numb, you're dead to it, right? And I know a lot of dead and numb people, and I know that my involvement with this campaign is an opportunity for people who I know, who I drink with, who I talk with, who I sit with, who I play video games with, who I do, to actually talk about politics and the political process. And so for me, this is the only candidate who I considered this time around, and I'm excited to work for this. When I said it, I'm working in support of a movement to elect a person, right? And so that's a completely different thing than just working to elect a person. I am working in a movement, I've been a part of a movement, and I'm working now in another part of the movement to elect a person. And so this is the most exciting time for my life. Right, and I've done some exciting things.
I know you have.
I have. And this right here is I'm proud to say that I'll be able to look back on this time, this foray. Who knows what'll happen, right? But to say this foray into electoral politics, I worked for a candidate like Bernie Sanders. So.
Well, Phil, the people are not going to let me let you reference video games without me asking you the question. Do you play Fortnite?
Oh, man, I'm going to be that guy. No, I don't play Fortnite. I play Madden. You come see me at Madden. You can come see me. I play Injustice, too. I play whatever my nephew makes me buy on the video game. But, no, I don't play Fortnite. I'm not as cool as y'all. But you know what? Can I say this, though?
Yeah, of course.
I'm incredibly confident. I know if I did play Fortnite, nobody could see me.
Oh,
I'll say that. I'll just make a blanket statement. Yeah, I could do that because I just know I'd be good.
The gauntlet is thrown. People,
it will.
If you want Philip Agnew to come back here on this Twitch stream and play Fortnite with you, I think you should maybe get like a week of practice. I don't know. Maybe you're feeling so confident that you don't even know.
I'll do some practice all night one night.
Okay, well, if there is interest, let us know in the comments and we will circle back to you.
It's off the Olympics. Everybody's like, you gotta train.
I mean, I'm competitive. I'm a Leo.
You know what? Don't talk about eSports. Like, eSports is crazy now. It is.
What do you mean?
Esports is up there with like professional athletes.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Are playing video games to a level we've never seen before. It's
in the network is huge. I mean, part of why we chose to have a Twitch stream in the first instance is because this community is really big and involved.
Yes.
And it's hugely under discussed in like kind of the mainstream media space, considering how many people are actually on here. And I've said this before, but we did one of our Hear the Burn episodes following two big lefty Twitch streamers, and it was I don't know if it still is, but for a long time our most popular episode by a mile. I also can't let someone you we're talking about how this is a life and death issue, and I can't let a lot of people are talking about universal health care, Medicare for all in the comments, and someone here says here in the UK we have NHS, which is great, and someone else down the thread says compared to what what they have in the UK. What we have is abysmal. I want to play a video that we did about a month ago in Miami, where we talked to you and some people who were associated with the Dream Defenders and other folks you know, and the activist community, young students down in Miami, and play this short clip of a full video that you should all go and watch in full online. Okay, just one moment. Okay.
Before we do it, real quick.
Yeah.
Because people forget.
Is the live stream muted on that machine? No.
Because people often forget, so this is gonna sound silly. We're talking Miami, Florida.
Yes.
And the reason I say that is because people do not imagine Miami actually being a part of Florida. They see it as a whole nother world because it's exotic. But we're talking about a state that did not accept and does not have Medicare, right? We're talking about a state with some of the worst health care of any state. So when you hear Miami, I just want to contextualize it. No matter what you see on TV, it's still a city in the United States, specifically in Florida, and Florida is abysmal for healthcare.
After we watch this clip, I want you to come back and tell us a little bit more what the state of play is on the ground in Miami. But first, I want to show people this. All right, here we go.
What do you perceive the healthcare situation to be like in America today?
I'm gonna jump in super quick. I ain't been to the doctor in 7-8 years, and it's not because I don't like going to the doctor, right? It's because it just wasn't financially good for me.
I had a knife go through my hand, and I didn't have health insurance because I just moved to Miami. And I remember patching my hand up with duct tape because I didn't know what else to do.
I'm not gonna go to the hospital unless it's a gaping wound.
My family would receive food stamps, and so they was getting health care from the government, but you age out of that. And I got a really good opportunity to be an RA on campus. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have to commute, raise gas money, all this kind of stuff. But living on campus, you have to get health care. I was not in a place where I could say no. They put it on my bill, and it was actually one of the reasons I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to walk the stage because I have to pay this health care off from this university.
I was incredibly lucky that a friend's older sibling happened to be a physician in Miami, and they took me under the table, sewed up my hand. But if I hadn't known someone that could help me, I would have been walking around with a gaping hole in my hand tied together with duct tape.
My friend was in an accident with his car, and he wouldn't get into the ambulance because he knew how much it would be to ride to the hospital. Him and my partner had to wait to call his mom to come pick them up to take him because they knew that bill just for that ride would be so much, which was kind of scary, right? Especially if he needed immediate care, and thank God he didn't at that.
Scary, it's insane is what the better word I think is.
That's the environment that we're currently living in.
In this country, 500,000 people go bankrupt every single year. And you can understand why. If anybody here, God forbid, me, God forbid, had a serious health problem and you didn't have great health insurance, what do you think is going to happen? If you got a $100,000 bill from a hospital, which is not unusual, you're shaking your head like it's unthinkable that you could pay it off, right? Meanwhile, I should tell you that the insurance companies and the drug companies last year combined made $100 billion in profit. So you can't afford to go to a doctor.
Nope.
You are in debt for having to do health insurance. And the drug companies and the insurance companies made $100 billion in profit last year. It's a pretty crazy system.
A pretty crazy system indeed.
Yeah.
So tell me, are those the kind of stories? Because Bernie, we were both there in the room. Like those stories were as affected by that. You saw his face in that video.
Yeah.
I mean, and he hears these stories.
That was a crazy story too. She got stabbed in it. This is crazy. Yeah. Well, let me listen. You heard the stories already, but let me real quick tell you about the former governor and now congressperson from the state of Florida, Rick Scott. Before he was elected governor, before he ran for governor and was subsequently elected twice, he was convicted of the largest Medicare fraud in the history of Medicare.
Jesus.
The largest. Okay? Let me tell you. He pled the fifth 75 times in a deposition. All he did, I plead the fifth.
Wow.
I plead the fifth.
Wow.
And this is the person who was elected twice as the governor of the state of Florida. And so what we're talking about, people really think of Florida as palm trees and beaches and resorts and tans and vacations. And one thing we say is Disney World is the only place where dreams come true for people in Florida, right? And Florida is backwater. But what we've been able to do in the last few years, right? Through what Bernie has been able to create across the country, through what Dream Defenders has been able to do, young Black, Latino, poor white people who have organized and have talked about what the future of Florida could look like, with this vision that we're all collectively talking about, is we were 20,000 or so votes away from having the first Black governor of Florida, who ran on an incredibly progressive platform, who was endorsed by Senator Sanders, right?
Yep.
Senator Sanders was one of the first national figures to endorse Andrew Gillum as the governor of Florida, when many people were not talking about him, right? And so in a state like Florida, right, where people have lived under a governor who is a fraud, right, under mayors, under sheriffs, under, administrations who have destroyed their lives, we have still been able to build a movement, and a lot of that is based on the excitement that we've worked to build, through the excitement that a Senator Sanders has been able to escalate and amplify around the country. And we know we're going to have a completely different Florida, because last year we passed an amendment that 1.4 million people who haven't had the right to vote because they had a felony conviction can now vote. And who do you think they're going to move towards? Right? The administration who kept them in prison, whether behind bars or not, for the rest of their life, or the people who have worked every single day to improve their lives and have a vision that animates them.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I, also want to emphasize that, one of the reasons I really am drawn to Senator Sanders and was willing to come aboard this campaign, even though I really enjoy being a journalist as well, is because he does the right thing even when it's not the unpopular thing. And his support of a move to enfranchise current felons as well as the recently incarcerated, to me, really speaks to that commitment to kind of foundational ethics and fundamental rights in a way that other people will sometimes give lip service to, but not necessarily follow through on.
Right.
So I'm really proud of that
and
as well.
in a way that people are new to.
Right.
If they are talking about it, they're very new.
Right.
Yeah.
We say you're not new to this, you're true to this, right? So Senator Sanders has been doing this for a long time. It doesn't take a briefing or a policy briefing or a round table with people. This is something that has to be lived and breathed.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are real new.
He likes learning that way too. That's one of the things that I've noticed is, instead of getting stats, like he likes the human side of it, right? Which at the end of the day, that's what will be impacted. That's what is going to make this country better, is if our society is thriving. So, hearing you talk, like one of the things that, at least from my own experience, doing activism, then going to a campaign, is you feel like this responsibility to be this bridge for people, to not only, learn about the candidate, but also, buy in. So what would you say to those people that, aren't completely bought yet on supporting Bernie? That, like, what would you say to them? How would they get involved? Like, what should they do?
I really love talking to people about the campaign, and not just. First off, I'm a listener. As an organizer, you start off listening.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna listen. What do you have? What are the number one issues in your life? What are the things that keep you up at night? What are the things that prevent you from being the best person or the most full person you want to be? What's the things from keeping you from living in the house with your baby mama?
Yeah.
What are the things that are in your life that are keeping you from being able to be who you want to be? That's the first thing. I'm gonna listen. What would you like to see? The thing I love about the platform that Senator Sanders has put forward is I can let people talk about the world that they want to see, and I can feel pretty confident that that world is reflected in the platform that Senator Sanders has put forward. I can say that confidently. And so it feels good. And look, you've organized for a long time. Listen, you've been in this world, right, engaging in conversation for a long time, right? Yeah, I'm gonna throw you in. But you're here. We're all here together.
I appreciate it.
I didn't want you to be alone. But
we have to do it together.
Yeah, we're doing it. But you know that there have been times that you've had to go to the ballot box or knock on a door or talk to a homegirl or somebody about a candidate that you was real lukewarm about. Like, we have to do this. I've done it in Florida. I know specific, I'm not gonna name, but you've had to be like, hey, I know everything you're saying is right, but we have to do this. But I don't feel that way here. I'm able to say, look at this policy where we're a campaign that listens, right? With policies that speak for themselves. Read the policy here. read theirs, and you come back and make the decision that's best for you. I'm fully confident that, and the other thing is there's trust.
Yeah.
There's trust as an organizer, as somebody who people see in going to the grocery store, the same grocery store you're going to, living the same life you live in. They understand that you wouldn't do something just because it's hot or it's cool, right? You're doing something because this is the right thing to do, and this is the time that calls for it. And we're up against something that is so atrocious, so evil, so inhumane. You can't respond to that with lukewarmness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. I definitely tell people all the time, look, my job is to be the spokeswoman for the campaign, right? And I wouldn't have taken this job. Thank you, Philip. But I wouldn't have taken this job. I wouldn't have put myself out here if I thought I was going to have to be saying things that I didn't believe in. I don't need this, right? Like, I have my own reputation and my own reputation as a journalist and an individual. I don't need to be out here having to sell people something that I don't genuinely believe in. And Bernie Sanders makes this job easy for me. It makes it easy for all of us who have the same job that I do. But just bilingually. And, I'm very grateful for this opportunity and to be able to do this for that reason. So this is a shorter episode than we normally do because we have some good programming coming up next on the live stream. But I want to say, for those of you who are in the area, Philip and I are going to be on Howard's campus. If you're a Howard student, we're going to be around asking questions, listening, just as Philip just described. We want to know what your political priorities are and tell you a little bit about the Bernie campaign. So please stop by. We'll be on campus starting around 10:30 tomorrow for a few hours. So hit us up on Twitter if you're on campus and you want us to be able to meet up. And until the next episode of The 99, we bid you adieu.
Bye.